and welcome to a special Memorial Day weekend almost. We're nearly there. We're on the verge of it edition of the DSR Daily. I'm David Rothkopf, and I'm joined by Riley Fessler. Hi, Riley.
Hello, I'm ready for the weekend.
Ready for the weekend. And Minna Stein. Hi, Minna.
Hi, I'm also ready for the weekend. How are you?
Good. And as we tried to do last week, and as we will do in different ways each week until we get it right, we'll not just look at the news of the week, but we'll look at kind of what we expect for the week ahead. But we'll do that by picking up off of stories from today. Which one of you two wants to go first? The sooner we get this done, the sooner you're at the beach or stuck in traffic on the way to the beach. As we expect, record traffic on the roads this weekend as people seek to celebrate Memorial Day. Also apparently a 2 to 3% increase in air traffic. Not going to Newark Airport, I hope. Anyway, are you first, Minna?
I am. I'll kick us off this morning. Harvard University has filed a federal lawsuit against the Trump administration and is seeking a temporary restraining order to stop a policy that blocks international student enrollment, calling the move unconstitutional and harmful. The Department of Homeland Security claims Harvard failed to provide a safe campus for Jewish students and accuses foreign students of anti-American activities, prompting the revocation of the university's authority to host them. With over 7,000 international students and billions in federal funding at stake, Harvard argues the administration's actions threaten academic freedom and the futures of thousands.
This is wrong in so many ways. First of all, it's, fascism, right? What they're trying to do, and Kristi Noem said as much, is develop tools that can get them to force universities to teach what they want them to teach, to promote their ideology, to keep out ideologies that they don't like. That's fascism. That's ending academic freedom. It's ending freedom of expression in this country. It's not legal to pick out schools or businesses or people and punish them simply because you don't like them or you don't like what they stand for. That's not legal in this country. So I think Harvard, which filed a suit this morning to stop all this, will very likely prevail. Having said that, does that mean the university, the administration will stop? No, because this is part of a campaign. Why are they targeting Harvard? Because they don't think Americans care about Harvard. They don't think Americans care much for people from elite universities. And when you think of people who've gone to elite universities, like, I don't know, a lot of people in the Trump administration, I have to say, I agree with them. I don't care for those people. But I do care for academic freedom. And I do think that this is going to be a bigger and bigger issue this next few months, until at least the courts push back on it. There were even Harvard students who were, one was apparently international student trying to get into the country, trying to get into Boston yesterday, and they were detained by ICE. It's super ugly. But there is good news here, guys, because we do want to look for good news. If you're a stupid American, there'll possibly be more jobs for you because we're going to keep the smart foreign people who've come to this country and helped build our country out. So, that may be something that appeals to Trump's base. I don't know. Maybe you see this as an opportunity, Riley.
My time is now.
Your time is now. You're not a stupid American. You're a smart American. But, it does go to the point, right? Keeping out smart people who usually stay in this country and contribute, not taking the money, which is a form of export that a lot of universities depend on, is really stupid. It's lowers our national IQ and lowers our growth as a country, in addition to being fascistic. This is like a triple threat of horrible policies. But probably you've got something better we can talk about, Riley. Change the subject. This one we know will be around for a while and aggravate us all.
Well, I'm going to disappoint you yet again because President Trump escalated trade tensions by threatening a 25% tariff on Apple for iPhones sold but not manufactured in the US and proposed a 50% tariff on EU imports starting June 1st. These threats caused significant market drops, with Apple shares falling 3.5% and broader indexes like the S&P 500 and Euro Stoxx 600 also sliding. Trump's comments reignited concerns after a brief de-escalation of global trade conflicts, warning Apple to shift manufacturing to the US or face penalties. The EU withheld comment pending further talks, while Apple accelerates plans to move more production to India amid rising trade pressures.
I mean, seriously. First of all, what does this tell you? This trade stuff is not a result of a policy. It's being directed by, I don't know, whatever it is that controls the impulses of Donald Trump. And so we launch off on these various things because he's frustrated. This is a manifestation of him realizing that his threats and bullying to the world aren't working. And so what's his reaction? Well, let's threaten and bully some more. They're not going to make iPhones in the United States. That doesn't make economic sense. That's good for the United States. There's some things we don't want to make. We want to focus on things where it's more high value added. Furthermore, a lot of phone factories, I'm not sure people really quite get this, certainly Donald Trump doesn't, are super automated. It doesn't bring a lot of jobs to the United States. The jobs it brings to the United States are not particularly good jobs. It's just Trump does not understand, nor does Peter Navarro, nor apparently does Howard Lutnick, nor apparently does Scott Bessent understand why trade works the way it does, or what's in our interests, or what's not in our interests. But I assure you, the bad reaction to this today will make sure this is a story next week. And I don't know how the EU is going to respond to this threat. But they've seen what happens when the Chinese say, okay, buddy, bring it. And I know that's not really the inclination of the EU, but that basically ought to be their response, which is, we're not going to capitulate. We're not going to give you what you want. Now, I've got some advice. And as you know, because you listen to this podcast, my advice is gold. So Apple, Tim Cook, I hope you're listening, probably a DSR Daily listener. Tim, just go to Trump and say, Apple is planning to increase manufacturing in the United States, and we have a blue ribbon committee appointed at Apple to look at it, and we plan to break ground on new manufacturing facilities within the next 2 to 4 years. Okay? Then wait until Trump is over this particular snit. Don't really deliver. And, the promises can be lies, because Trump is a liar who expects to be lied to. He expects the Chinese to promise him things that they're not going to give him. And this goes for the EU too. You don't have to do anything when Trump makes these promises. You just have to, these threats, you just have to promise to do something. And then he'll get the victory that he wants. And 2 to 3 years from now, you say your plans have changed. That's the way it's done, folks. Wake up, smell the coffee, play pretend with the loony in, the Oval Office. Isn't that right, Minna? Aren't I right?
You're always right.
Oh, my God. Oh, my God. This is turning into one of those totalitarian mini-states. No, I'm not always right. But about this, I'm right. All right. Change the subject.
The House narrowly passed the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, a sweeping package advancing Donald Trump's legislative agenda, including tax cuts and spending reductions. But its future in the Senate remains uncertain as GOP senators demand changes due to its $4 to $5 trillion debt impact. Speaker Mike Johnson secured passage by one vote after concessions to hardline Republicans and moderates, though some conservatives still objected. Democrats have strongly condemned the bill as harmful to low-income Americans, setting up a contentious Senate debate before the July 4th deadline to send it to Trump's desk.
Yeah, there are some people that think the Senate will be a little more sensible about this, will realize that it is, incredibly fiscally irresponsible bill that will increase the deficit. They realize it is a socially irresponsible bill that will cut vital services for people who need them the most. But will they make big changes? Probably not, because Trump will be breathing down their neck and they're all still afraid of Trump. Why? I don't know. Guy's going to be out of work in 3 years. What they really ought to be thinking about is who's going to succeed him and how do they do that. But they're afraid of the Trumpy base, and so they're likely to come up with something with some differences, probably delay this a little longer than Trump wants it to be, and then they will pass this thing. Again, Trump doesn't care about the substance. You get all the essence you need to know from Trump in the fact that they're calling this the big, beautiful bill, which is so stupid. But he wants to be able to say that. In fact, Trump said on some social media platform or something that he thought this was the most important piece of legislation in U.S. history, which, not only is it not, but, it's the kind of statement that would cause anybody else to be institutionalized. It's so disconnected from reality that it would cause anybody else to be institutionalized. Having said all of that, what we'll hear about next week is further and further progress towards a bill that cuts Medicaid, cuts food aid for people, and includes a whole bunch of big provisions to make billionaires and Trump donors happier. And tax breaks for silencers, Looney Tunes. But again, next week, this will be his big story. In Washington, it's likely to be the very biggest story. And the slow pace towards this immense, ugly bill will dominate the news, I suspect, as we get closer and closer to June. Because, Trump's going to really want to have something to celebrate in his $50 million Trump's birthday parade, which Riley will be covering for us live from the parade room.
Yeah, I'll stand in the middle of the street.
Yeah. Well, good luck with that. We value you too. They're putting metal plates on the streets so that the tanks don't destroy the.
That's good, because I don't want my streets in DC to suck more than they already do, I guess.
Well, yeah, they don't really care about DC. Trump wants tanks for his birthday, which is.
I would too.
Would you? Because
that'd be cool.
When is your birthday, Riley? You don't have to.
November 25th.
Okay, everybody. Well, Minna, let's work on getting Riley a tank.
Well, my birthday is June 30th, which is very close to Flag Day, so we could keep the tanks around. Roll them out
we
again.
we could just view the parade as the Minna-Stein parade. Why does it have to be Trump's birthday? We could just make it Minna's parade.
Rebrand.
Right, yeah, exactly. What's another story?
Benjamin Netanyahu harshly criticized UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer and the leaders of France and Canada, accusing them of supporting Hamas by condemning Israel's offensive in Gaza. His remarks followed the fatal shooting of Israeli embassy staff in Washington, which he linked to international criticism and misinformation about Gaza's humanitarian crisis. The UK, France, and Canada denounced the killings and reiterated their support for Israel's right to self-defense, while also condemning the limited aid access to Gaza as inadequate.
The one thing I want to flag in all of this, because clearly the killing of these two lovely young people is terrible, indefensible. is the speed with which Netanyahu and some of the people around him have started to politicize it. They have started to use it as a tool to push the idea that criticizing the government of Israel equals supporting Hamas, equals supporting a guy who commits a murder like this. Um, and of course, in a situation like this, very sensitive, nobody wants to talk about the facts. But, Netanyahu's statement that this somehow is a result of misinformation about what's going on in Gaza is outrageously political, is a huge lie. In fact, the contrary is undoubtedly true. The truth about what's happening in Gaza is exacerbating tensions, which are making things more dangerous for Israelis, which is why the Netanyahu policies are so awful, not just because they're terrible for Palestinians, not just because they're illegal, but because they don't advance the cause of peace or stability or safety for Israelis. Quite the contrary. And the speed with which he has cynically tried to turn this into a political advantage is nauseating, as is, I must admit, virtually everything that Bibi Netanyahu does. Minna.
Yesterday, President Donald Trump hosted a private dinner for top investors in his Trump
Ugh.
meme coin, where 220 attendees, who spent a combined $148 million, were rewarded with exclusive access and gifts, sparking a wave of ethical criticism. Critics, including lawmakers and watchdog groups, accused Trump of profiting from the presidency by using his position to enrich his crypto ventures, which have generated over $300 million in trading fees and involve controversial figures like Justin Sun. The event, combined with Trump's broader financial entanglements in the crypto industry and foreign investments, has raised serious concerns about conflict of interest and transparency.
I mean, yeah, because, Minna's got to put it that way. This stinks to heaven. Let's think about what these people have spent this money on. These meme coins have, well, let me turn to our crypto specialist, Riley. How much intrinsic value do the meme coins have, Riley?
A big fat zero. Nothing.
Zero. So why would they put money into them?
Your guess is as good as mine.
No, well, let's take a guess. Minna, do you have a guess why they would put money into them?
Power, influence.
Influence, because it buys them access to the president. There is no other reason. Are they going to make money off of this? No. They've got money. This is just a way of putting cash into the Trump box. And does that work? Well, yeah, this dinner last night proves that it works. They got access. Most of them, according to reports, are foreign. Most of them would not have gotten access. The White House has played this ridiculous game that this was on his free time. Like, oh, it's okay if the president cashes in on his free time. Or repeating this notion that, well, everything he owns is in a blind trust controlled by his sons, as if his sons were not his bagmen going around the world collecting contributions to Trump as he tries to monetize the presidency. This is the most egregious act of corruption in the history of the United States. And a day or 2 days earlier, the Qataris gave us a plane. The only reason that's not more egregious is because Trump's not actually going to take control of the plane personally for a couple of years. There is a remote outside chance the United States may get a little benefit from that plane. Very unlikely, by the way. But it's grotesque. But this is even worse. In fact, I think we can round up our coverage on this Memorial Day weekend by saying this is the worst week for corruption in the United States ever. Trump likes those big statements. Ever since the country was founded, this week, the week you're living in, saw more high-level corruption by senior-level U.S. officials, who have always, by the way, had some corruption bubbling around, but saw more overt, high-level, put the money in the bag, get something from the president, ugly, tin pot dictatorship, corruption than we've ever seen. We need a 3-day weekend. We need some time to recover from this. You need to go to the beach or do whatever it is you do on Memorial Day weekend to just, take 25 showers to cleanse yourself of the disgusting, output of this particular government. So I wish that for all of you. I wish that you, Riley, and you, Minna, have a great weekend. And I look forward to seeing you again on Tuesday. We will not be doing a podcast on Monday because it's Memorial Day. But on Tuesday, we'll be here bright and early. And in the meantime, I hope you guys hydrate. I hope you use sunscreen. Of course, here in Washington, the temperature is going to be like 40 or something. It's ridiculously cold here. But I hope you have a good holiday weekend. So thanks, Riley. Thanks, Minna, for an excellent week. Thank you, everybody, for listening. And we'll see you again after the holiday. Happy Memorial Day. Bye-bye.